Hello and welcome to tonight's Get in Tune. I'm Michael Gracia, and I got a really great guest for you tonight. And it's Friday night. I know it's not a normal night I would do a show. Usually I'm on Tuesday, but it's a special because this guest has some great stuff going on, and I've been meaning to talk to him. And I've known him for a while. So he's a writer, an illustrator. He is the co-host and co-creator of the fantastic podcast, which I happen to have been on twice now, Catch Da Craze. So here is Sam Vera.
What's up?
Hey Sam, how you doing?
I'm doing good. How's it going?
Doing good. Good day so far. Thank you for coming on and allowing me to do this special Get in Tune with you tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, anytime. I'm going to throw up your contact info. Let me just make sure I'm clicking the right one. So yes, your Instagram, your Facebook, and your Twitter is all Catch Da Craze, which is a DA instead of the word the.
Yes, everything from our podcast, YouTube, any social media, it's Catch Da Craze.
And everybody who's watching at any point, feel free to ask questions. I think we got a really cool show. We're going to talk about a Kickstarter that Sam and his partner George are putting together, or actually it's already going on. It's not putting together. It's been put together. But before we get into it, let's learn a little bit more about you. Let's give the audience a little background on Sam. So you're a writer and an artist. So when did you start getting into comics? Was it a childhood thing, adult thing? What was it for you?
Oh man, I'm gonna date myself. I mean, since I was a kid, it started with Captain Kangaroo, and so I don't even I say you kids, you're gonna get annoyed, but back in the days we had these TV screens, and we used to have this plastic cover that went onto the screen. So there would be some scenes in Captain Kangaroo, and you'd have to draw a bridge, help him get over to the bridge, and so we'd have these markers and go over it. So my mom will put it on the screen, so this way you won't mess with the TV screen. So I was always doodling as a kid.
Yeah.
And when I was a kid, I created characters called Scrungy and Cosmic Gorf, and which was one of the comics that I released called Cosmic Wars, which is this right here that I released back in the days.
Okay.
Nice. And so I was always into illustrating, but I copied a lot. So like I would illustrate what I saw. And I would pause back in the days when we had VCRs. I would pause the VCR, and I would record the GI Joe episodes and pause, and then draw GI Joe. So I had all these big battle scenes of GI Joe.
That's exactly how I learned to draw, by the way. Is I used to pause. I recorded every cartoon I could, and I'd pause a frame, and I'd sit and copy off the TV.
Yes. And I used to even take my action figures and create scenes, and then draw from the action figures. And it wasn't until my mom's boyfriend said, "You'll never be a true artist because you're a copier. You're a fraud." And I was like, I wanted to punch him in the throat. And I was like, "What do you mean?" He goes, "True artists draw from here." And from that point on, I said, I'm going to go and create my own comic book, and that's how it started.
And can I say, if there's any kids watching, that's a bunch of BS. We use reference all the time. I still look at action figures. I can't draw horses to save my life. If I need to draw a horse, there's pictures of horses everywhere on my computer.
But, Yes. But you know what? When I look back at what I've become as far as an adult, that feedback can destroy kids.
Yes.
When you say you're never going to amount to your fraud, those are harsh words. For me, it was motivation. For me, it put fire in my belly. I said, "Oh, I'm going to show you," and that was my motivation. It's like, I am not a fraud. I'm going to prove to you that I'm not. And that, but when I look back on it, how disastrous that could be for a child and destroy their confidence.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But
no, I know exactly what you're saying. It's something that I've talked about when I travel and talk at panels, and when I go to schools and talk, that it's not always meant in harm.
Right.
It's meant to be helpful, but sometimes people don't realize, words, number one, could hurt,
Yes.
but number two, it could change someone's mind and point of view at a certain age. So, like, kids, I've always said, are constantly creative. They're always doing great things. One of the reasons I love working with kids, the ideas they come up with, sometimes I just even want to be like, I want to steal that. That's just brilliant. But it's when somebody is like, they reach a certain age and it's like, no, you got to focus on other things because art's not going to make you money or something like that. It's like, you got to put away the toys, you got to put away all that stuff and start focusing to get good grades, to get into college, to get a real job, things like that. And it's not, again, meant to hurt the kids. It's meant to, I want you to do well. I want to, and it doesn't have to be a parent. It could be a brother. It could be a teacher. It could be whatever, somebody trying to help. But knocking that destroys necessity, like skills that are necessary to a person, like problem solving skills. Creative people think outside the box and can figure things out and look at it differently. So having those type of words being said to really anybody, it doesn't matter if it's a child or adult, can just harm in general, even though it's not meant to.
Right, and I believe it's, if you're not equipped, and if that's the only way, that's how you've been spoken to, you don't know any better. But I also believe it's the power in the messaging. So you can shape someone's life by trying to deliver that message in a way that's motivating rather than destructive. But again, I just used it as a motivation for me, and that's how I've always been. If you said no, I said yes. If you said hot, I said cold. For me, it was like, I'm gonna prove to you that I can do it no matter what. And that's just like a little insight.
And that's great. And so you're talking about you were watching cartoons and stuff. When did you get into comic books? Were you into strips first, like newspaper strips? How did it go?
Archie Comics is my mom. So the first comic books that I actually saw, she used to collect the Archie series. So I would read her comics. And then it wasn't really until freshman year in high school where I went to the local store, and it was a regular deli, and they had to spin a rack. And that's when I got Spider-Man and G.I. Joe and Sergeant Rock.
Okay. Yeah.
And then I was just addicted.
So you were like 14 years old when you started collecting, like really, and it's funny because I was 13. I remember going in 8th grade to a comic shop. That was like the first time I've ever been into a comic shop. But before that, I was finding them in delis and
I haven't even been into a comic shop until probably my first, because I grew up in Queens, and I there were no comic shops in my neighborhood, and my first actual comic book store was experience was the one by the World Trade Center. Was that DC Comics? I don't know if it's there anymore. That was my first one, then Midtown Comics. And I remember thinking, like, where have you been my whole life? And Forbidden Planet. Forbidden Planet
was great, yeah.
And the reason why I ran into Forbidden Planet is because right next to it was a Halloween costume shop. And so I was going there to get a costume, and I was like, oh, look at this. And I was addicted.
It's funny. I used to take when I was teaching at a college, we used to take the kids to the city to do some drawing exercises, and it'd always be around Forbidden Planet. So I would be like, okay, you guys are adults, meet back here after lunch, and I would just go hang out at Forbidden Planet, and I'd come out with a bunch of comics.
Oh, I could spend days in the comic book shop. Amazing.
So who were some of your artistic influences and even writing influences?
For me, Charles Schulz. I was a big fan of Charles Schulz. In fact, I used to say I want my stories to have the same kind of impact that he had on me as a kid, and he was always my motivation. In fact, on the wall right now, I have the People magazine article cover with him on it, and I also have the record where with him on it. It's just he's been a big influence. His style of art has been a big influence on me. Just the approach, his story, how many rejections he's gotten through. Because I have an entire file cabinet full of rejection letters.
Who doesn't?
I know, it's like I have a good story about a rejection letter that wasn't with no words. It was somebody else's portfolio. That was the way of telling me, if it doesn't look like this, don't bother sending us anything.
Oh
I
my
was like,
God.
wow. I was like, wow.
You
Those are
know,
fighting words.
it's funny you say that about Schulz. I mean, I don't know if you can see behind me, but
Yeah.
I got hardcover Peanuts up there. Even actually in my bedroom on my nightstand, I'm reading a Peanuts book right now. I mean, I have Peanuts and Hagar the Horrible in my bedroom.
Yes, yeah,
That's on my
yes.
nightstand. But
Oh, so the Sunday funnies. Those
yeah,
were the best. I used to look forward to the Sunday newspaper. Oh my gosh, forget about it, because my mom would get all the clippings for the coupons and all that stuff, and I'd run for the comics.
yeah. Yeah, and I will say I had an order. I don't know if you did this, but I had an order throughout the paper of how I had to read. Like, I loved Peanuts so much. Peanuts was one of the last comics I read, along with
Always take the
Calvin
best
and
for last.
Hobbes.
Yes.
So Calvin and Hobbes and Peanuts were always like my last strips to read. And I'm also a big like High and Lois and Beetle Bell, like I said, Hagar. So those would be like all my last strips, that I would choose to
always
read.
save the best for last.
Yeah, I'd always go through the others. So yeah, I mean, I don't know who in this industry hasn't been influenced by Schulz in some way. I mean,
I think I think when you ask typical comic creators, everyone goes to Stan Lee or Kirby or So for me, it was what he did was he gave life to 2D, and and it became part of your family. I look forward to Charlie Brown's Christmas. I look forward to the episodes. It's like,
I show you this real quick? My wife and I, we collect the Hallmark Christmas ornaments.
Yeah.
This is from this year when
awesome.
we went in July, and
That's
it plays.
awesome.
I don't remember what it plays, but it plays one of the songs or something. And I'm like, I got that, and I picked up this little Woodstock.
Oh, that's dope.
With you can't see Woodstock, but I mean, they stand right next to on my windowsill next to me. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's
but
awesome.
anyway.
Yeah, so it's like, I appreciate a lot of different creators out in the market, but the one that really it's personal. It's really Charles Schulz, because I grew up as a kid. That was the biggest influence. I mean, for me, it was stuff like the Smurfs. It's Heathcliff. I mean, the stuff that really influenced me as a kid. And then as I got older, it became G.I. Joe.
Yeah. No, I think we have to be around the same age, because I'm going to tell you, behind my Bruce, a little figurine, there's like 13 Heathcliff books, those little mini books that we used to get as kids. So I have, I mean, like, that's what I love. I got an old Heathcliff children's book on the other side, and I got almost every version of the paper cut Smurfs books out.
Nice.
So everything you're mentioning.
Yes, when Smurfs the movie came out with Johan and Pee Wee. That was my first time I took a girl on a date to go see we went to go see the Smurfs. And
you're talking like the really old one from like the 80s.
Yes, I was a kid. We were kids. I was probably like in 6th grade or whatever. And we went to go see the Smurfs with Johan and Pee Wee. Yes,
that's hysterical.
It was awesome. We broke up after the movie, but it was whatever.
Was it the movie? Was it the movie that killed it for you?
No, it was another kid, a boy who had muscles. She thought he was cuter, so she left.
It happens.
Yeah, it happens.
So, let's move on from your heartache from back.
Yeah, I know, right?
Heartache. So, when did you start? Like, I know you said your mother's boyfriend kind of said you were a fraud and you got to do things this way. But when did you really start like saying this is what I want to do and I'm going to make comics? And you really made, like, let's say, your first real comic book.
This was it was right after I was in the music industry, and I had a rap album and I was in a group and the whole bit. And it was around the time when I lost my mom to cancer, and I almost lost my partner to gun violence. It was a drive-by shooting or whatever, and so I found myself at a crossroads, right? And when I was in the music industry, I had a few buddies of mine, and we were plotting out to build this multimedia empire, right?
Mhm.
And at that time, it was Crazy Skills Productions was the production company, but I wanted to create Crazy Media Groups, which I currently own the LLC for now.
Okay.
Um, and one of the divisions of Crazy Media was going to be Crazy Comics,
Okay.
and that was so I had the logo, I had everything there, and then it wasn't until wow, it was in the '90s, early '90s. I'm I it was me, a friend of mine, Robert Garrett, who passed away. He did Exmoor Studios, a book called Galtao. Michael Lascara, Leo Gonzalez. There was a bunch of us, and Richard Clark, Terry Jenkins, and I had all these scripts. I had a book that I wrote called Tales of an Assassin. I had one called I forgot what it was, but I had several titles,
Hmm.
and so then we formed Crazy Comics, and we started working on our first books. And my first book working on was Cosmic Wars. So
Cosmic.
I wrote the other ones, and then Robert would edit them, and then we had other artists working on it. But Cosmic Wars, which is this one right here, was my actual first ever comic book.
Okay.
This is the collected edition,
Okay.
um, and so that was my first attempt, and it was in the '90s, yeah, early '90s.
Okay. And so that is it's collected. How many issues did you put together for that?
At that time, this one was 3 issues, and I stopped. So what happened was, so I started Crazy Comics,
Yeah.
and then over the time, people were falling off, new people were coming on, and then I was at the School of Visual Arts,
Hmm.
taking additional courses for credit, and I met George Medina,
Okay.
and we were in this life drawing class, and it sucked because all the models were male, and it was like, "Come on, give me a break here." And so I remember George and I were annoyed, and we start talking. Yeah, because he was like, "Come on, how many times I'm gonna draw this dude?" So um, he said, you know, he shows me, I think it was Wonder Duck, or it was like a hip hop comic book of a duck,
Yeah.
um, and he had Rush 537, so little ash can books, and
Mhm.
we started talking. I was like, you know, you never use 11 by 17. He's never used them before. I said, you don't scan them, you don't. But. And I said, well, I'm doing Crazy Comics. You want to get down? And then we started talking.
Yeah.
And so then George joined in, and then Robert bailed on us, and he decided to do his own thing. And we had a few other guys. So then our first official comic con was, and I talked about this previously on my show, where we wanted to do a comic con, but we didn't have money. And so, and we wanted to print the books in color, but we didn't have a lot of money, right? And we wanted to make an impact. It's like, well, how do we do this? So I went over to the Big Apple Comic Con at the New Yorker Hotel. It was
Mhm.
me, George, and I think Jonathan, and a guy called John Gandolfo, who I met in college, and we went, and he knew Michael Carbonero.
Okay.
So Michael Carbonero ran the Big Apple Comic Con.
Yeah.
So I go there. Mike has his middleman, and the guy's like, and I'm talking to him about how do I get a table. It's like, well, you know, it costs this. No, no, no. How do I get a free table? He's like, oh, that doesn't. Well, you got to talk to Mike. And I go to Mike, and Mike is very Liberace esque, little out there.
Yeah. I know Mike.
Yeah,
My first show was a
eccentric.
comic show.
Mike is very eccentric.
Yes.
His mind is everywhere. Fast talker, right? So you got to get him because he's limited attention span.
Yeah.
So it's like, wow, what I was smart enough to do was we designed a Big Apple Comic Con ad, a poster, and we printed it in color.
Mhm.
And so I'm going. I said, hey, I'd like to get a table at one of your shows. And he's like, oh, it costs this much money. Go see this guy. I said, no. I said, no. How do I get a table? I said, wait, can I show you this? And I showed him the poster. He loved it. He goes, you did this? I said, yeah. You did this? That's my show. I said, yes. You did it for me? He said, yes. He goes, if you do this for me, you'll get a table at the next show. And I was like, what? And so that's how we got into so we And then I had a friend who worked at a place that had a printing press, and so we gave him cash, pennies on the dollar, whatever. But he gave us the printed books, but we had to fold them and staple them ourselves. So we're there on the floor at my apartment that was just stapling and folding, and we put everything together. We do the Big Apple Comic Con, and we were the talk of the show because we were these unknowns that came out of nowhere, full high gloss color comic books with a banner backdrop. We had logoed shirts on. We had girls with us, which was my wife and George's girlfriend at the time, and Robert Nunez, who was another artist on. He was doing something called Wizzy.
Yeah.
And everyone was like amazed at the quality of the books and all that other stuff or whatever, and we were excited. And that was the first time, and it was Cosmic Wars was my book, and Rush 5377. Those were the two books we released that day.
No, that's cool. And you did, and you said it was, since you were the talk of the show, you guys, I assume, did pretty well.
We did really well. We did so well that we had Brian Polito come up to us, introduce himself to us, and spent a lot of time talking to us and giving us great tips on navigating through the industry. We had the actor from Star Wars, the kid that played Boba Fett's. He was the kid.
He was the young Boba. He was
young Boba Fett.
Yes.
And he came over and he got the book, and we had lines, and it was amazing, and it was exciting. I think the biggest fear that we had was, can we repeat this?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's like, can we? As like, the good thing is that we made back the money to print again, but we were paying. I forgot. I mean, he was charged us like maybe 20 cents. It was so much. We were paying 70% less than we were paying a traditional printer in black and white, and we were getting a full high gloss color.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Yeah,
that is a great deal.
Yeah,
I remember the first book I made was an ash can of my Plunger Pup character, and it was, I think, 12 or 16 page book, and I remember passing it around, and it had this kind of textured front cover. It was all in black and white. I think I paid $100 for 100 books, but it was really,
nice.
It wasn't bad. And then I passed them all. I maybe have like 3 left that I kept for myself. But I passed them out. Then nothing ever happened really too much with it. Yeah. And then I self-published a 3-issue series with him, and I went to an actual printer, and I ended up eventually tossing boxes because I moved books, but I didn't move enough, and they just were storage, Yeah. And that's the problem with that stuff. But it's, printing is expensive. And let me ask you, since we're just on that topic, I know we're going to be talking about your Kickstarter, which is a new book you have. But are you doing, because of the cost of printing, and I know there's a lot of print on demand, are you doing any digital stuff these days with your work? Is it going to come out digital?
Yeah, so currently right now, all of my stuff that I created is available on Amazon and on Barnes & Nobles in digital. So from Cosmic Wars to There's an Alien in My Toilet, which was my...
Yes, I remember seeing a post of that. I just love the cover.
Thank you. And to Scary Airy, which is my kids' book. And I have several other kids' books as well. All that's available on Amazon and on Barnes & Nobles right now. With Catch Da Crazees, we want to be able to have both print on demand and digital. Everything's already set up to do so.
Awesome.
So right now we're just like every day, I think like 6 times a day I'm online just promoting the Kickstarter.
Yeah.
The Kickstarter is like it gives you a kick in the pants because you got to keep an eye on it all the time.
I can imagine.
It's like having a roast in the oven, and you got to keep on.
Yes.
Yeah, so, but
like the time I was on your show and I had to take quiches out of the oven. Keep an eye on it. It was it's a rough thing. I haven't done Kickstarters, but I've talked to people who have done them.
This is my first. So
there's a bug around here, just flying around. But and they tell me all the work that goes into it. I'm not sure I ever want to do one based on what people are telling me.
Yes.
But before we actually get into the Kickstarter, the name of the book that you guys are doing is called Catch Da Crazees.
Yes.
All right. Can you tell us a little bit about the book?
Yes.
Like what it's about?
So Catch Da Crazees is about George and myself, right?
Okay.
So George and I, and I'm just gonna go back before we go forward.
Yeah, that's fine.
Catch Da Craze Podcast is a show that I created back in 05. And at the time I decided to create Catch Da Craze, it was in the beginning of where podcasts wasn't a big thing, and so I attended a pod camp at the New Yorker hotel, and it was about the podcasting and why people should. That's the future, right?
Mhm.
And it wasn't a big thing at the time, and there was only Comic Geek Speak doing podcasting. They were like one of the first, and so we did ours, and
Mhm.
I started it, and I called it Catch Da Craze because everything had to tie into crazy media. And I felt Catch Da Craze, which for me is a metaphor for the next best thing.
Mhm.
Like catch the wave,
Yeah.
and whether it's in music and art and comics, whatever it was. And at the time, it was hot, and we didn't know what that meant. We were looking at the data, and it was like hundreds of thousands of downloads, and I'm like, wow, that's cool. Didn't understand it,
Mhm.
and so walked away from that after I forgot how many episodes. I walked away from comics, and I walked away from Catch Da Craze. Years later, George and I regroup. I did the kids Comic Con.
Yes. I think that's where I met you.
Yes,
Maybe for the first time.
Yes, I did the Kids Comic Con because Alex Simmons called me up and he goes, "Would you be interested in doing it?" Because I haven't done anything in years, and I did say I'm coming back into the game, and so he got wind of it. He goes, "Would you be willing to come?" I was like, "Absolutely." Mm-hmm. So I went and did the Kids Comic Con. George met me there. We started talking. Then he came over to my house and he bought this guy behind me. I don't know if you can see.
You know what? I can give you the screen. Hold on, let me give you the full screen.
There you go.
So
that's Gorf from Cosmic Wars. So he had my stand-up. That's my poster board character, and he brought it over. He goes, "Remember this?" And it's like, "Oh wow." So we started talking, and I was like, "Yo, I'm thinking about bringing the podcast back." And he's like, "Oh, you should," and blah blah blah. I said, "No, but if I bring it back, would you come back and be a co-host?" He was like, "Absolutely." And I said, "All right." So everything has changed, and I've been out of the game for 10 years. So I had to go back and identify what's changed. The tools that have changed, and the industry and social media is big. I wasn't, while I still had my Facebook account and all that stuff, I created my Instagram account when I decided to get back into the game. I created all these other things. I maintained my Twitter account that I had for years, but all this stuff was new, and then streaming. And then for me, if I was going to do it, I wanted to do it where I can have like a small production studio. So, I have like the Rodecaster Pro where I can have all of I can put on my commercials and all of the other stuff. And I have the Stream Deck where I can go from scene to scene. And I'm just anal that way. And they're putting on a production, not just a camera for me.
Okay, I'm sorry to interrupt. Can I ask you a question then? Because you do these shows that you do. You put on your podcast, and you're basically the tech guy. I mean, I know you are asking questions because I've been on the stuff, and we've talked, and you've asked me questions. But you're while we're talking, all this stuff's appearing on the screen. That's all you behind the scenes with this equipment that you're talking about right now. Okay.
So, most people think that there's like, so George and I joke about, we say we have a guy named Herb. He's an imaginary tech guy. Like, Herbs, you screwed that up. But it's really me. So most people, when they look at the production, they're like, oh, they have a team and these guys. No, it's just Sam. And that's how it was back then. They thought that we were like this machine, but I'm just a grinder. And I don't like to be at the mercy of someone else knowing something I don't know. So for me, it was like I needed to understand it. So that way, like my goal, this is my philosophy. I want to understand it. So when it gets to the point where it's big enough and I have somebody doing it, I can direct him. And if something goes wrong, I can identify what went wrong because I know how it works.
We have the same exact philosophy.
Yes,
anyway,
that's just my thing. And I bought a new editing software and all these other things. And and I just had to educate myself for a few months. And then when I was ready, then I did. It came from the radio with Mark Torres, and I drove
Mhm.
out to Long Island. And I did that radio interview, and when I was there and I was watching all the equipment and how they were connected everything to an iPad, and so the whole time they're interviewing me, I'm processing what's happening in the room. So at the
Mhm.
end, I started asking them questions. I said, "How does that work? What are you using from this? What are you using from that?" So I'm that
Yeah.
kid that's like, "But why, mommy?" Right?
Yeah.
And so hence we decided to relaunch Catch Da Craze and Catch Da Craze podcast, and it was and it's focused on the world.
Mhm.
So during that time, I created a character and I did some skits with Crazy Man. So if you've seen some video of skits of an Afro guy, and it's called "Stop Acting Up,"
Mhm.
and he's my alter ego, right?
Oh.
So I didn't realize that subconsciously I'm creating the world, right?
Mhm.
And so the um, and I and one of the things, we've talked about it in the show, I needed to feel comfortable that George was ready
Yeah.
because we have a past, and there was a point where I think his heart wasn't in it anymore. So for me, it's like, all right, we're doing this. Is he ready? Because
Mhm.
if he's ready, I'm going to go all in. And then one night I was sitting alone. I said, all right, I want to rebrand everything. I want to take it to the next level, and I want to have a comic tied into this, and with some um, Jack Daniel's Tennessee whiskey, Tennessee honey whiskey. I'm sitting here by myself, and it came to me, the Crazies, Catch the Crazies, and I started creating the premise, and
Mhm.
I started trying to design the characters, and I was frustrated because I didn't like the way they looked. So
Mhm.
I remember the guy that I worked with in the past who did the Adventures of Cosmic Gorf, the children's book for me,
Mhm.
and I loved that style. So I reached out to him. I said, "Hey, here's my premise. Here's the character profiles. Here's the look that I'm looking for. Here's the budget. Can you do it?" Yes, he did it, and he created the look that you see for Catch the Crazies.
Mhm.
And then I called George. I
Mhm.
said, "Hey, George, we're gonna do a book about us." He said, "What?" And I said, "Listen, it's Catch the Crazies." He said, "What?" And he starts laughing. So we start talking, and and it's basically about two podcasters,
Mhm.
George and myself,
Yeah.
who same thing. We created a podcast. It had momentum. We were the talk of the indie community back in the days. We were hosting indie after parties. I
Mhm.
hosted the CAG Awards. I was the MC. It was a lot of things. And then we fell off. We try
Mhm.
to get back in the game, and there's these rival podcasters that call themselves "We Are the Craze,"
Mhm.
that antagonize and taunt. And George and I have been part, and our hearts are wanting to get back into it. We meet up again, same thing. He comes to the door with the banner, "Hey Sam," and so we're trying to get back in to no fanfare, and we're fighting just to get views. And we're
Mhm.
like, "What's going on?" We were it back then, and now we're just a guppy in the ocean.
Mhm.
And so I get frustrated. I go out into the forest and I shout out to the universe. I was like, "If you can hear me, please help us become the best podcast in the universe." And that's when the crazy man appears. So the crazy man is my alter ego, and heart is pure as gold, but his execution is horrible. So
Okay.
he thinks he's doing good by helping us become the best. So he unleashes the crazies onto the world. And
Mhm.
what that does is creates drama for us.
Mhm.
And because while initially we benefited because our ratings are through the roof and all these subscribers and we're becoming the hottest thing, um, we're creating, we're terrorizing the population where now we're under investigation by the detectives. Our antagonizers are the ones who basically said that we're the ones who are doing all this. And when we figure out what's happening, now we have to try to stop and catch the crazies.
Mhm.
And the crazies don't want to be caught. And that's basically what it is. The crazies are a bunch of little minions that came from elsewhere, which is
Yeah.
another realm.
Mhm. Can I say this just from your description? Now, I've been on the Kickstarter page, and I do plan. Hopefully, my next paycheck I can contribute. All right. I'm sorry, I don't make a lot of money myself, so it is a fun idea. And as I was watching the little intro animation, which we'll talk about in a little bit, all I thought was this would make a really great video game, like a great level, like old school 2D, Mario style, these guys out with nets or something and having to climb ladders and buildings. And I that's what I saw in my head watching this. So maybe that's your next Kickstarter after this one gets funded.
Well, thank you. Well, the whole idea behind when I created the Crazies, and then when George and I talked about it, we took it to a whole different level because there's some things that George contributed to it that's just made sense as we talked. So the way it works now is that we plotted out the story, the entire arc, and George scripts it, and then he sends me the first draft, and then I will add whatever I think needs to be changed, especially in the dialogue, and then we go. And then once it's done, then we send it off to the artist. But when I created it, I don't know if I created a book called "There's an Alien in My Toilet." And
I'm sorry. Can you repeat that? I didn't hear it.
I created a book called "There's an Alien in My Toilet."
Oh, okay. Yes. No, I know
And when I created this, at the time, it was being optioned by several different networks. It didn't go through because at that time the industry was changing and networks were changing hands, and we were represented by Circle of Confusion, the same company that represents Robert Kirkman with The Walking Dead, and they represent the Wachowski brothers with The Matrix and all. So they picked us up. They went representing the book, and it was exciting. And I think that also left a bad taste in my mouth when I got the final. The senior executive at Warner Brothers, it was Kids WB. It changed into something else, and they went a whole different direction, and they dropped everything that was existing on their table, and they said we're gonna go a different direction. And so I think that was the final draw for me, on top of a few other things, and I walked away. But when I create anything, especially with the Crazies, I create it from a perspective of what I grew up with. So and I look at it from a multimedia angle. When I'm envisioning the Crazies in my head, I'm looking at it as a cartoon. So we start off with a 2D, but my intention is to get it onto the screen. My intention is to get it in as a toy. It isn't. I'm not looking at just to have a comic book series. I'm looking to have a multimedia product, and so that's where we're going with it. So that's why when I decided to outsource and get somebody to create to do the animation for me, I just wanted something that was able to touch on the premise of the story in 60 seconds or less.
Okay.
And you know what I mean? And it's like, how can I get someone to understand the concept of this and then see it the way you see it?
Yeah.
I just did another podcast where like, oh, I can see it as a cartoon. That's what I want the heads, and that's where I'm going, and that's what I want the executives at Netflix and at Amazon to recognize when I start talking to them, because I'm coming after you, right? So I will find you. I know where you live. So that's my intent, right? Okay. It's give heart to the story, and it's my story and George's story, but with some embellishment and some fanciful, supernatural, quirky, goofy, chaotic fun. You know.
No, that's great. And so the Kickstarter's been up. I think it said September 25th it started, so it hasn't been up for long, correct?
We launched it last Saturday. Saturday at 6 p.m.
Okay, I don't remember the date.
It was the 26th.
26th, okay. So, and
the goal was to be by tonight to 25%. And the last time I checked, we were at 22%.
Oh, that's not bad.
Yes, because if we didn't get to 25%, then the next 3 weeks we would have to do 666 a week, and I don't like that number, right? So, and I was like, oh oh no, because nobody, it said 666.6666. I was like, oh hell no. I said, I'm not frying.
Yeah, no. I get you. I mean, I'm not one for superstitions with the numbers like that, but I completely understand. I have other superstitions that like, I'll tell you one right here. This is the pencil I draw with. Okay, it is a mechanical pencil. It's a Pentel. What number is I forget? It's the 5mm, but it's the P205. No one is allowed to touch this pencil. No one, not my wife. I get angry if my cat goes near it. It's all this I feel has been my magic wand. This is where I put my energy into. And if someone touches this, I have to destroy it. I have to throw it out, and I have to get a new one. That I've been like that for decades. I mean, don't get me wrong. I have tons of supplies. I got, cola erase pencils I like to draw with and stuff. But when I'm really doing my real work, this comes out.
Nice.
And this, no one is allowed to touch.
There you go.
If you see me with this, you stand back. That's how it is. All right. So I get superstitions, man.
Yeah. Yes.
But anyway, okay. So let's just talk quickly about sorry, that bug is really annoying me there. So with the we're going to talk about the Kickstarter now. Like, I really want to focus on the Kickstarter, and in a moment, I want to get to the rewards. Like, what could people get for being on, for donating?
Right.
But I want to talk a little bit about the animation, because in your head, you said you want a multimedia project, something that crosses over different mediums, and animation is something. So you said you outsourced it. Where did you find your animator, and what was the process like finding an animator to create your vision?
So there's a website called Fiverr, Fiverr.com, and I use Fiverr because I had a bad taste in my mouth using DeviantArt, right? So I think, and people are going to give me flack for this, and I really don't give a damn. So DeviantArt, well, I'm a member of DeviantArt, and there's amazing pool of talented creators on DeviantArt, and that's why I go there, because just for some influence, and just to get that charge up when you see somebody that posts some beautiful content. You're like, whoa, you get inspired and you want to do something. Mm-hmm. So, but on the forums, they could be very immature and brutal. So I used to post that I was looking, and I would put the budget, and then people would just attack you because they didn't think that budget was enough. But if it's not for you, you don't need to comment. It's if it for you, then say yes, I'm interested. So what I did, I went to Fiverr, because Fiverr does two things: it protects the artist and the client, and because it puts your money like in escrow, right? It holds it, and then if you satisfied with the work, then you authorize to release it, and they'll release it. So I went onto Fiverr, and I just posted I was looking for an animator and the budget or whatever, and then I had a bunch of pitches. They say I could do it for this, I can do it for this, I can do this, right? And you start looking at it, and I was like, all right. And I landed on, and I'll get the name, I forgot the name, on this team that I felt that was able to give me what I was looking for in 60 seconds. So I wrote it out, the script, and basically it just said scene 1. I put it in 4 scenes. Scene 1, dialogue. This is what's happening in the scene. This is what I want to see. Scene 2, scene 3, scene 4. I sent them the character designs, and that was it. And they went off in silence. And I said, if you have any questions, and I also sent them all the sound files. So my wife is the reporter. She's the voice of the reporter. It's me and George in there, and I'm also doing the voices of all the crazies. So when you hear the voices in the background, that's me doing multiple voices. So I do, and then so they did the animation without the effects.
Okay.
All of the additional effects I did. So all the stuff that you see, whether it's smoke and this, whatever, all that, I did it in post production. They did just the 2D animation.
Okay.
And what I did was they sent it to me in one file, then I cut it all up, and I put it where I wanted it, and I did all the editing afterwards.
Let me ask you one question. You cut out when you said you did the effects. Did you say the program you did the effects in, or
No, I
what
didn't
you?
say the program.
Oh, okay. No, I heard you say I did the effects in or I on
Oh
or
yeah, I did
you
it
cut out
in
for a
what did I
second.
do?
I don't need to know the program. I'm just asking. You said something, and
I use Filmora Pro.
okay.
Yes. So, and the reason I went there is because I didn't like. So what happens with Apple is that whenever they update the iOS, it defuncts your previous stuff, and then you have to go to upgrade all your software. So I said I'm done with that, and because I used to have Combustion, I used to have 3D Studio Max. None of it can work with this new stuff, so I lose all that, and I'm not going to upgrade. Who has the money to keep doing that? So Apple has a monopoly on everything, and it screws everybody up. So I went and found Filmora, which was cheaper, extremely cheaper, and I bought the full license. And then if they have any updates, I have it for a year, where I could get updates for free for the whole year. And if I want updates beyond that, it's $15.
Yeah.
If I do anything, and so I don't have to worry about, and
Mhm.
so I learned how to use that, and so I do all of my editing, whether it's from the podcast, any of the stuff that I do in there.
Yeah, I've actually just recently saw a video on that software. It looks really
Yeah.
really good. It kind of gives like Premiere its run for its money and stuff. It's
Yes, I had Premiere, and I also use Affinity Photo for as my replacement for Adobe Photoshop, because and it does everything Photoshop does, because of the same thing. Everything stopped working when I upgraded to the newest Mac, and I'm like, I can't.
Yeah, I got to be honest. I have a subscription to Adobe, because I use it for work. I use it for everything. But I don't. If I was, sometimes I think, should I switch over to the cheaper software and all that stuff?
Affinity does everything, has layers, has everything, filters, everything Photoshop does, it does.
Yeah.
And believe me, I was skeptical. I watched a lot of the YouTube videos, the whole bit. I downloaded the trial. I was like, oh, this works, and boom. So for me, it was about how do I get the cheapest, the most inexpensive, but yet that I get the same power and effect that I would in some of the.
I'm just so accustomed to Adobe. I don't know if I want to learn a new software. That's just. I've been using Photoshop since 1994. I've been using After Effects since '95. And Premiere about the same time. So for me, it's all.
I stopped using them last year.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't know. I maybe one day, but I'm so accustomed to it, and I can close my eyes and know where everything is. It's one of those things. But anyway, let's get back to your stuff, because that's what we're here to talk
The
about.
animation, George didn't know about it. He didn't know I was doing it. So for me, it was like, all right, when I created the comic book, I'm also preparing my pitch package. So it's I'm working on my press kit. I'm working on all that stuff, and designing the trading cards for the characters and all that. And so for me, it's like we need a video promo, and that was the real reason why I did it. And I wanted in animation. And I mean, if I had the money, I would have had it in 3D animation. But I was like, I'll go with the 2D. And these guys were able to give me the look that I wanted, and for the right price. So that for me worked. And I knew that I was going to have to do production on the back end. I knew to get it the way I wanted it. But I was like, if we're going to come out with a new comic, and that's just the way I think. If we're going to come up with anything that's new, and this is all ages, I want to come back out with, to show its growth potential in multiple arenas. So if I say I have a comic book that could be an animation, people are going to say, well, let me see the animation. Do you have anything to show me that it can be that, man? So I already killed that. The trading cards, it could be a trading card game. Well, show me. Well, we got that, right? So all that stuff's in the back end that no one knows about just yet, that I'm saying it here. But so all those things, right? So that's how I think. I look at it as a business for, it's a work of passion, but it's something I'm going to put my heart and soul into, and do it not just as a hobby, but to do it full time.
that's important, like thought process, and not to make this a teaching moment, although I am a teacher, and I'm not teaching to you, but for those who are watching, when you go into comics or you want to go into animation, it's not all fun and games. I mean, I've said I enjoy going to cons, but at the end of the day, I enjoy going to cons because I get to see friends of mine I don't get to see often. It's the after parties, it's the hanging out. When you're at a table, it is work. Yes, you're sitting there really trying to get people. You're a barker for the circuit. Come to my table. You're doing all this stuff. I say sometimes now it could be related to like the new zoo. Families just show up and you don't even know if they want to buy. They're just kind of looking. Look at that monkey in the cage over there. There's the tiger area. It's like, it's a lot of hard work. It's very stressful. It's nerve-wracking. It's expensive for us. And I'm not knocking shows because we need them. It's our business, and I think they're great. But the shows are fun for me after that business stuff is done. Yes. So to understand when you're going into this type of business, if you want to call it that, it is a business. You got to think, oh, I can write, I can draw. That's great. But do you know how to promote on social media? Do you know how to put together a press kit like you're talking about? Do you know how to create a pitch to sell it to a publisher or to an animation studio or whatever it is you're going for? Right. There's a lot that goes into this, and there's a lot of people like me who are primarily a one-man operation, and it becomes a lot of work, a lot of stress, and then sometimes things just don't get finished because it's like, I can't do it anymore. I need a break. And then you move on to something else. But you have other people you work with, which is fantastic,
Well, because that's one of the things, the lessons I learned from when I was doing it back then, because George jokes about it. When back then, in the early days, if I had a concept, I would write it, draw it, ink it, color it, but get it all done, and that'd be done in a couple of weeks or whatever, and I have a finished product, and I was just a maniac that way. Now, I'm mature enough and I've learned enough to know that I know my limits as an illustrator. And like, for instance, with the Crazees, I just couldn't land the look. And every design I did, I threw in the trash. I was like, I don't like it. I don't like it. I don't like it. And so I was like, all right, I got to outsource it. And so now the hard part about it is now you're dependent on somebody else. Even though you're paying them, you're still dependent on that somebody else. So, the same artist that I commissioned to do the designs based on my profiles was going to do the book. Mm-hmm. And we were going to have pages to be able to show on the Kickstarter on the 26th. Everything was going fine. Everything was going good. Hi, how's it going? Oh, I'm going to have all the finished layouts for you 2 days before the show. I was like, before the launch of the Kickstarter. And instead, I got I have to bail. I'm not going to be able to do this, and I wasn't able to do anything.
Wow,
these past 30 days.
That really sucks.
So, which is why all those cover promos, I did them. So I was like, I need something for the Kickstarter. So it's 48 hours before the launch of the Kickstarter. I called George, and he was like, "What are we going to do?" He's like, "Let's just cancel it." I was like, "No, we can't." And so it's like, I'm working full time. So now I'm on DeviantArt, I'm on Fiverr, I'm all these in these art portfolio websites, and I'm putting in that I'm looking for an artist and have a budget, blah, 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 blah. I went through 75 portfolios in 48 hours. Jeez. And I landed on one. His name is JC Grande, and he was an illustrator on comics for Image and a bunch of independents, really talented artist. He started on Sunday. This past Sunday, just the day after we launched the Kickstarter, and I'm paying him out of pocket, hoping to recoup that from the Kickstarter, and but that's the risk you take, right? Yeah. And so, but I'm excited because his style is probably gonna give it an enhanced look, so I'm excited about that. But those are the risks, and for me was, I had to be nimble and react, because that can destroy somebody's momentum. Yeah. And I was like, look, we've been promoting this for over a month. We can't stop now. If I have to draw the damn thing, I'll draw the damn thing, but I'm going to find somebody but I'm going to put some promo pieces that I already have done We'll get that out there. And so, because I believe that the universe repays you for the work that you put out, right? It's reciprocal. Everything's aligned. So, I'm excited for what's happening. But those are the risks in this comic book game, especially when you're an indie, because it's I just have this guy drawing that book, and George is writing the script, and I'm editing it. But all the other stuff, there's still a lot more work to do in the back end.
Yeah, it's it is a lot of work. I mean, like I said, I haven't done a Kickstarter. Not sure if I'm ever going to, based on what I'm hearing, but I do have ideas for upcoming projects that I'm working on. So if I may have to talk to you guys and find out some stuff from you. But let's get back to specifically Kickstarter. Obviously, there's different tiers of what people can donate, and they get different rewards for that. Right. What are some of the rewards you're offering to people who are donating to you?
So basically, I'm on the website. So there's just it's the rewards start from $1 up to 100.
Okay.
And so the $1 one is your name on the thank you page for $1. So it's just basically, but then you have the $5 one, which is the crazy reward. And in the $5 one, you get the digital copy of that issue, and you also get your name on the thank you page.
Okay.
Then there's the $10 award, where it's the hyper crazy reward, and all of the rewards are named after the characters.
Okay.
And that is Catch Da Crazees #1 printed copy. So with the $10 award, you get a printed copy. Also includes Catch Da Crazees #1 digital copy and your name on the thank you page. Okay. And the thank you page is in the book. It'll be printed in the book. Okay. Then there's the Super Crazy, which is a $20 reward. And that's the Catch Da Crazees #1 variant cover, which will be done by me. And also includes the Catch Da Crazees #1 digital copy and name on your thank you page. And that one, the variant cover, is limited to 25 backers. Okay. And then there's another one for $20, which is a super crazy reward. Is the Catch Da Crazees #1 signed printed copy by the creators. And also includes the Catch Da Crazees #1 digital copy and your name on the thank you page. There's the Ultra Crazy, which is $30. That one's limited to 25 backers. It's Catch Da Crazees #1 print copy and variant cover, and 11x17 poster plus your name in the book. Yeah. And then there's the Extreme Crazy, which is you can get the Catch Da Crazees #1 print signed copy, a shout out on the Catch Da Craze podcast, your favorite limited edition crazy sticker, and 11x17 poster plus your name in the book. Then there's the Psycho Crazy reward. They get heftier as you go along. And it's Catch Da Crazees #1 print copy signed digital PDF of the behind the scenes book, which will include sketches and copy of script, a shout out on the Catch Da Craze podcast, your favorite limited edition sticker, and the poster. Then there's the Dreamer reward. That's the $100 reward. And that's the Catch Da Crazees #1 print copy signed commission sketch card of any character by me. Catch Da Craze t-shirt, a digital PDF of behind the scenes copy, which will include sketches, a copy of the script, a shout out on Catch Da Craze podcast, a set of limited edition crazy stickers, and the 11x17 poster plus the shout out. And that's limited to 15 backers. Wow. So there's the rewards in a nutshell.
Yeah, no, they sound pretty good. I mean, a lot of people are reading digital these days, so digital is fantastic. Outside of what I think you said 2 of them, everyone gets a printed copy of the book, which everyone loves a printed. You're gonna have variant covers, which are going to be fun. Yes. I mean that's a lot of great stuff for people who really love comics. And as someone, like I said, I do plan to support you as long as my paycheck allows. But as someone like me who loves comics, I do love comments. If anyone's out there and wants to comment, but I'm talking comics right now. I love the print versions. I love the digital versions. I love anything that deals with comics. It's my favorite medium. And even though I love animation and I've animated in the past and I'm getting ready to do another animation just personal, nothing beats a comic. I've always said with comics, and the reason I love making them is I'm limited to my imagination and my skill with the pencil.
Yep.
That's it. I can go to any world. I could draw any character. I can meet anything. As long as I can draw it and I can dream it, I could do it, and that's one of the reasons, like, I love to support indie people, because we all have different skill levels in drawing. Some people, like me, go very cartoony. Some people go, hyper realistic and whatever it is. But if you got a great story, I want to read it, and I'm not knocking mainstream, but I've read mainstream. I've read mainstream my whole life. And there's not a lot more you can shock me with in storylines. And I've seen it with the characters. And listen, I'm a huge DC guy. I love DC characters. Marvel's great too, but I love DC. And Dr. Fate's like my all-time favorite character. I literally have like, one, two, three. I have 5 figures of him in front of me right now. But how much Dr. Fate can I read? Right. I want to see new characters. I want to see new stories. I want to see something that is just fun. And when I watched your trailer, when I read about what this is about, I'm like, this is a fun book. It sounds like a lot of fun to me. And that's number one, the main reason I want to support it in financially. But it was the other reason I wanted to bring you on, is to promote this, because like I said, it's fun, and I'm not finding a lot of fun stuff, if you will, out on the racks. There's some great stories going on.
Right.
Great stories. Don't get me wrong. I don't knock any, as someone who, somebody like me, I don't believe in knocking any artist, any writer who works hard, who, whether they're mainstream or independent, if they're on the shelves, they're on the shelves. They earned it. That's great. And I'll never knock a story. I can like a story. I can hate a story. I may never pick up the stuff again. If they show me consistently that, hey, they're good writers, but I'm not into their stories, I'm not going to read it. That's my choice. But I want fun. I want something that's going to be entertaining to me, that's going to give me a laugh, or that's keeping me not out of the superhero genre, because that's mostly what comics are, but that's giving me new places to go. I've been to Metropolis. I've been to Gotham City. Take me somewhere else. And that's what I want. And that's actually one of the reasons, excuse me, I started the Get in Tune, was to talk to more indie people and promote what's going on out there. And I'm thrilled that I'm getting to chat with you now and help promote something that I think is going to be a really great product and a really great story. And I'm hoping that, this video will get out there, and, share it as much as you can. I'll be sharing it too. Let's get this funded so we could see this book in people's houses or on their iPads or whatever they donate to you, man. Even the dollar helps. So everybody listening helps. Everything helps. Let's help them make their. And you don't have a large goal, if I remember correctly. What are you looking for?
The goal is $2,500. And
2,500.
Yes, that covers the artist that we already paid and the printing of the product.
Yeah, and that's not that's not a lot of money these days to put something together like this. Right. Yeah. So I definitely think it's doable. And you have how many more days left in here?
We have 3 more weeks.
3 more weeks. Okay, yes. So 21 days, guys. 21 days to back this.
In week 1, and 21 more days. And currently we have 24 backers. So thank you. I want to say thank you to our current existing backers. We appreciate you. But yes, we'd have to average 25% a week. We're at 22% today. We're hoping to get to 25% tonight, because a lot of the pledges are happening between 9 p.m. and 1 in the morning, which is crazy. So a lot of the night owls, I guess, after they've gone out and did all their things and then they got home, like, oh yeah, I'll donate. So after you had something to drink, it's even better.
let me ask you this: for the people who donate, is this just to the continental U.S. or are you shipping anywhere? Is this overseas? How you handling
Right
that?
now, I think we didn't put any restrictions.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's that's fantastic then.
Yes,
So
I don't think we put any restrictions. I gotta ask George because one of the things that helped this process out was George put up all the content on the Kickstarter.
mhm.
So he did all the back end stuff for me when I worked on the other promotional stuff. So I would have to double check that, but I don't think we put any restrictions.
Yeah. Okay, no, that's great. That means you can get money from all over the world. So, I'm going to wrap up in a moment, but is there anything else you want to mention or just, I mean, we've talked about your Kickstarter, we talked about it. Is there anything else you want to talk about before we go?
No, basically, check out our YouTube channel, which is podcast Catch Da Craze. We're on Spotify. We're on all podcast distribution platforms. And check out my Instagram and also visit our website, crazycomics.com. That with it's either crazymediagroup.com or crazycomics.com. It all go to the same location, and it's with two E's, not a Y. And you'll get to learn about all the stories, the stuff that I've created years ago, my kids' books, and this new project, Catch Da Crazees. So if
That's
you get
awesome.
a chance, please make a pledge today.
Yes, everyone, please go on the Kickstarter, support. Indie artists. I don't want to say these days. At any point, indie artists are important. They're creating stuff not just because they're trying to find a way to make money with their work, but they are putting out stories that they're passionate about. When we look at mainstream, it's, I don't want to call it factory, but it is basically a factory-like job. There's a writer, there's an artist, there's an inker, and it's like, you do this job, you do this job, you do it. When you're working with indies, it could be one person, maybe three people. It's not a large group. They don't have the backing that these giant corporations have. They're not owned by Disney or whoever. You're paying out of pocket. So helping indie artists whenever you can is to me one of the best things you can do. So I will once again make sure that the Kickstarter link is attached to this video, which I know it is on Facebook. I believe it is on YouTube, but if it is not on my YouTube, I'll make sure it's linked to it there too. And I want to make sure that everybody can go and let's get this funded so we can see these great characters come to life on our pages.
Yes, and thank you all, and catch the craze.
All right, thanks for coming in. I'm gonna just put you in the green room for a moment. All right.
Got it.
All right. All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in tonight. I hope you enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun talking. Tuesday night, we'll be back with our regular Get in Tune. And I'm going to have Brad Perry, the creator of the syndicated comic strip Pirate Mike, on. So we'll talk to him. We'll learn about, Pirate Mike, which is a fantastic strip if you haven't had a chance to read it. So thanks again. I will see you guys on Tuesday. Have a great weekend, guys. Bye.